I had been incarcerated in prison for 11 years of about a 17-year prison sentence. And not one time, not one step of the way through, had I been around a large percentage or a percentage of people that were going home, period. On some prisons I was at, nobody went home. You would never see anybody packed up to go. And here I was given the opportunity to work as a mentor in reentry and be housed, live inside of a dorm where everyone in there had 6 months or less, with the exception of me and one other individual that would serve as a counter mentor or co mentor or whatever. Our jobs were to motivate or encourage our fellow comrades in there to pull up to group in the morning and in the afternoon. They were typically 15-minute sessions, and also to encourage them just to be productive in that what they call the cognitive community or reentry environment. It was cool at first. It really was, even though it was turned up because, again, I thought it would be more calmed down. Individuals are getting ready to go home, but man, it was like fights every other day at first, especially over those phones. And like I said, it was cool regardless. It was cool to be around people that could talk about their freedom and going home and actually were having legitimate conversations and not losing their mind because they had been locked up for 27 years and weren't going to see freedom. These guys, barely, most of them were barely locked up for any time at all. So I got to learn more about the world. I got to work with counselors and have conversations with people that were going home every day and coming back. So the conversation wasn't limited to just the pod or what was going on inside of prison. And as part of my job, I was given the opportunity to help facilitate programs and create some, which I thought was fire. But let me tell you something. There were some definite negatives, as I stated. The fights were off the Richter scale. I'd have to say again because of the anxiety and because the shorter you are, the more people that are going home in your pod, usually the more people they are using the phones. And at the time when I was locked up, everybody didn't have cell phones. So the wall phones were a thing. And imagine 94 people in a dorm and only 6 wall phones and only a certain amount of time to make phone calls. And everybody wants to call their girl, their mama, their kids, all that. It gets spicy. But outside of the fights, which again would be ridiculous, it was the level of anxiety. It was me trying to figure out why everybody in this dorm was negative and angry because they had to pull up to a 15-minute group and they're getting ready to go home. Because I know me, when my time came up, that was my thought. I don't care if the group was for an hour. I'm pulling up, even if I'm fake listening. I'm going home. I'm not going to risk myself getting a charge, etc. But as I started to learn more and more in life and looking back at that moment, I started learning about environmental stressors being the number one cause of depression. And a lot of these individuals, they had been in prison for at least a year, jail, etc. And there was a certain level of depression or gloom and doom that was in that pod. I remember, one individual specifically, youngin, 25 years old, stand-up guy, but obviously was battling with some things. We would have these conversations out the blue where he would pull up on me like, yo, big bruh, because I wasn't an OG yet. Hey, yo, big bruh, I got something on my mind. You got a second? Which was part of my job in that dorm, to mentor, be a listening ear, and I was respected because of my background. But I could see that he was a leader and he was just battling some things, and I didn't know too much of what he was into until one night one of his friends, one of his brothers woke me up, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and he looked scared, and we're in a dorm. You understand what I'm saying? And typically guys in the dorm, when something's going down, they'll rather come to the elder, the mentor, the big dog than to go to the police, depending on the situation, because they don't want to get nobody in trouble. Well, he woke me up and he said, man, D's been up all night. He smells like he's sick, and he's standing over people's heads, and he's talking about people are out to get him. And this is younger than I was having conversations with that I knew was going through some things, but I didn't know like the extent of everything or what he was into. So immediately I got up. I went to go take use the restroom or whatever. And I had passed him. He said something to me, but I wanted to get myself up and use the restroom so I could come back and talk to him. And by the time I came back, I could smell him. It smelled like he was sweating profusely, hadn't showered in a few days. And the next thing I realized was that he was totally out of his mind, because everybody that walked by him, including me, to use the restroom, he said, "I know you're out to get me." And we had a decision to make. And the decision wasn't hard for me. I went to the booth to get the CO. Listen, people could call it what it was. I just knew this young brother's mind was slipping. He was in danger. He needed help. And he had a mother, a sister, a daughter, whoever, somebody waiting on him. But when I went to the booth, they didn't take it serious. They thought it was a joke, because D was sort of a clown, a joke type guy. Not a clown in a negative way, but somebody would clown people and all that and be the life of the party. They thought he was just, tripping. But it's 5 a.m. You understand what I'm saying? This is not a game. Eventually, after we basically babysat him till breakfast and the counselors got there and the morning shift switched over, I remember going to the COs again, and they thought that we were joking when we were saying our friend is losing his mind. He's acting as if everybody's out to get him. He keeps saying to everyone, "I know you're trying to get me. He needs help." Well, eventually, after our friend D ended up going down there to the chow hall when they called breakfast, narrowly escaping a few moments where he could have gotten into physical altercations with dudes, but we kept telling everybody like, "Yo, he tripping out. We trying to get him help, man. Don't mind him. That's on us." We ended up finally getting a counselor. And to this day, a good friend of mine, no longer a counselor up there, but he believed us and he didn't even question us. And he walked down there to the chow hall so we could get our friend D up out of there, because he was losing his mind. And the COs were even joking us on the way down there, because it was the counselor and four of us prisoners going to get our brother. And they said, "Oh, y'all a new goon squad." No, we're going to help our brother because y'all won't. And what happened was we eventually got him to medical. They gave him treatment. But he had began to take other people's medication because he was depressed and wanted to sleep. And they prescribed certain heavy sedatives there, like Thorazine, Seroquel, etc. And he was mixing them, as we had heard, which often happens in prison. And the mixture of the prescription medications caused him to be chemically imbalanced in his brain and caused issues up to the point that he forgot how to speak. And some people were saying he was eating his own defecation. The last word we received was he was getting better, but we never heard if he was out the blue. He was taken to basically the insane asylum for state prisoners, but we never received any more word. Reentry was different, man. Anybody that's like, "Yo, that's easy," like all it goes down on level 4. Well, I'm about to tell y'all why we got more work to do when it comes to reentry and rehabilitation and people that are coming home from prison, as I continue to tell my story. Peace.